What is going on, everybody? King of Chaos, Logan Black here. Although you guys are checking this out on my personal page, and this is episode 7 of Dude, Have You Heard This? It's a roundtable music show where a whole bunch of friends sit around and talk about music that we feel that it fell right under the radar. We're getting to express ourselves on this show. It's been a really, really fun journey so far. With me, as always, is my man Johnny Torres and my man Scotty Ceriti. Say hello, Mental Gin.
Hello.
Greetings, everybody.
This week, our guest, because you guys know it, you've been watching along, you've been seeing what's going on every single week. We have a different guest with us. This week is no different. We've got my buddy, Jamie Frey, the lead singer of band No Ice and former lead singer of the Brooklyn What, who I happen to be a humongoid fan of. How you doing, Jamie?
What's up? Good to see you.
Always a
Happy
pleasure
to
seeing
be
you,
on
dude.
the show. Talk some music.
Hell yeah, awesome. Before we get into anything with the music, I've got to clue everybody, including my two normal hosts and anybody watching
Sure,
along, how I know Jamie. So Jamie and I went to junior high together and high school together. Longtime buddies. The first time that I met Jamie, and I know you guys will pop huge for this, we were on a bus going back towards Jamie's neighborhood. I was going with some other friends that lived around there, and Jamie turned back to everybody and says, all right. Who's the greatest wrestler of all time? Shawn Michaels or Cactus Jack? And everyone's throwing the choices out there. And Jamie stops everyone. Just the hush falls upon the bus. And he goes, HBK is the showstopper. But Foley is God. Never forget it.
That's outstanding.
It was again, one of those moments where it's like, hell yeah, this is something I'll never forget in my lifetime. But if you're watching this, you guys really didn't come here for wrestling. You came here for music. So we're going to talk about the albums that we all chose this week. A very eclectic sound coming from everybody this week. I'm just going to get right into it. Let's start with you, Mr. Johnny Torres. Go right ahead.
Yes, sir. This was another one that I've been wanting to talk about for a while. 2008's Into the Sun by the legendary Candlebox. So always had been a fan growing up. You know, you hear the singles, Far Behind, You. This to me was just like they briefly stopped making music for give or take 9-10 years. And it was just very clear that they were listening to everything else that was going on, both in the world and in music. Because this one came out a little more aggressive than what you're typically used to from Candlebox. The first track, Stand, is pretty much a war protest song. A lot of it there, it stays pretty consistent in terms of tone for the most part. It's, in my opinion, absolutely loaded. Surrendering, Into the Sun, Miss You. But then you get to the Breathe Me In intro, and the whole album just changes, in my opinion. Between that intro and then the actual song, it's in my list probably of just the top 5 most beautiful things I've ever heard, music or, orchestral or otherwise. But this was, I feel like it flew way under the radar, maybe because of the protest content, maybe just because it was a 90s band doing things in 2008. But yeah, one of my favorites that I revisit on a regular basis.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're talking about a band that I guess really wasn't necessarily known for making protest music, and if they just start out of nowhere, it can kind of make sense that they would find their way to kind of being under the radar with something completely new. It's interesting that you brought up that the Breathe Me In intro as being something that sucked you in, pardon the pun on it. I literally have down in my notes, not sure if we needed the Breathe Me In intro, but I'm sure that live, that's a killer. Dude, I don't know the dude's name, but him talking over that as they're just riffing away on that is probably just such a mood setter and it's so much fun to be part of. So I think that for me probably would have been much better as a live part. But let me open it up to you guys. Jamie, talk to me about what you thought about this record.
Okay, well, this was an interesting choice. This is the record I'm sure that I would have never. Like, have no doubt that I didn't, would not listen to the Candlebox reunion normal, out myself, knob or whatever. I mean, Jake and I were friends during the sort of thickest years, all rock hit, and like we radio and kind of like a song, play or high school, and like this was a at that time, 90s, just a really term called like diet or grunge light. And have the sort of like the cachet of like Soundgarden, but Seattle. Trying to they weren't on Sub Pop, they were on Madonna's label, and they were the first band on Madonna's label. I think that they got a little bit. Say this: Far Behind is a song. It's the same chords as Purple Prince, and You Also rocks. I definitely grew up loving both those songs, but I think about Ken's style of, from what my understanding was in them in a long, they're kind of some of my friends, like early 20s, whatever, like high school age, younger, like, have used this for rock to the Nickelback or Blood or some Joe Tree or something like that. Butt rock, derogatory term, which is, I don't know, me. So this is what the kids say. Anyway, I think that Candlebox is one of these bands, sort of, not by their own fault, a sort of weird band of music, kind of like Chad Crow, just like being on the horse after out, like just like this sort of like white boy, really sort of sad alternative rock, sad grunge, 2000, and Candlebox sort of maybe they get shit on a lot for that. The album was a lot cooler than I thought it was gonna be. I'll say that right now. Fucking cool. The style of it is very much. It made me feel a lot of nostalgia, 90s alternative rock. Listening to it, also that there was good is to just like hard and like there that reference pulled again by the Who, and one of the stuff I thought was really cool. And each thing kind of had like a pink sort of thing to it. So it's like, so this album 2008, right? Like this was not like grunge was just not like probably grunge is more popular now as a retro thing to people who are just the music now. A lot of like probably getting into Nirvana and Pearl as full on fucking old classic rock. But like them in 2008 were like, I think it like holds up pretty good. What how good you think Box Reunion? The guy's a very good singer, and a lot of the more contemporary singers don't have pipes like that. The guitar part, it's got a heavy. It made me feel good in a way that like while like of that really just like headbangers ball alternative feeling, like just like really nostalgic. I think there's some music dated to that, like the box singles, M10, EP album, core, very like kind of specific sound. I think that the sound or Nick and Dotry, it was stuff like, but the record, the Cannibalics record, maybe had a few that were kind of stinkers. In general, the songwriting was good, the playing was good, and it's like an rock and roll record. In 2008, I would call that a winner, but it just like, what I mean? It was sort of going on. But much respect to Candlebox, I would say, on this reunion, as far as having no expectations of being it. I thought there was a dig in there, and they're good. They're a good band. They're talented.
So yes, the magical world of technical difficulties has switched things around, but not too badly, of course. Let's just hop right to Scotty. Your thoughts on this Candlebox record?
I think this is a great Candlebox record. I really, really enjoyed this. As you said, Jake, the Breathe Me In intro, hearing that live would probably be insane. The last note that I have here is I would have loved to see Candlebox at this time, because I feel like this would have been their peak when it comes to playing and performing. Consider Us is one of my favorite songs on the whole record, and Bitches Brewin' was a lot of fun for me as well. I really, really like this record.
Yeah, Bitches Brewin' I wrote down, like the riffage. I'm like, I can nerd out about like riffs, man. Like riffs are what, for the most part, will like suck me into a song, especially if it's like not like a Van Halen style, guitar solo type band, which, I mean, they're not. But the riffage, I'm like, all right, we're good. The opening riff to Underneath It All sucked me in. I did write this, and I know you guys will pop for this. How does it feel? I wrote, had to have been written for the opening of Raw. It had a very like WWE show opening riff sound. And I think, again, like 2008 Candlebox kind of makes sense. Like, oh yeah, that would make sense, because didn't they use Our Lady Peace for a while, and then Union Underground was it? So it's like very much that like radio hero rock that they were going with.
Yeah.
I don't know. So yeah, I mean, that's what I threw down for this. I did not expect anything out of this off the bat, because Candlebox, again, you said 2 songs, that's it. And then checking this out, and Scotty, you made the point of this definitely being a band that's kind of matured. Like, this would be a time to see them live where like they've really like, oh, okay, these guys have gotten this shit down to a science. Yeah, it definitely sounds like a band that's matured. The one like real critique that I had, and again, it's just all my personal tastes, it does get kind of like arena rocky at times, which is just completely like, that for me is just like, because I can't necessarily get behind that unless you're Boston. If you're Boston, I can get behind your arena rock.
They are an arena rock band. They're like a mid-90s and put your hands in the air arena rock band. Like, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, I think
credit to that. That's like a skill set in music,
You made the point where you called them post grunge, or like that ending of grunge, which I think is what I was expecting more from this. But yeah, definitely like a really, really fun listen, and something that kind of certainly took me by surprise. Any other questions, comments, concerns before we move on to the next album?
Did we ever
There's one other thing I wanted to
cover Far Behind on guitar in high school?
What was that, one more time?
Did you ever play Far Behind a Candlebox on guitar in high school? Did we ever cover that song? Is that possible?
I don't think that that certainly my crew of people were not playing Candlebox. But no, I can't remember learning that ever.
It was a viable question. That was a fair one.
Johnny, you were saying?
Oh yeah, just before I was like just reading about this album when it first came out, and I remember listening to The Answer and thinking like there's some Pink Floyd here. And sure enough, I went reading into the album, and they're like, this was really largely inspired by Pink Floyd, and David Gilmour-esque like guitar flexing out of them, which like is refreshing. Like, I don't know a whole lot of like post-grunge bands that are down to like, let's throw a guitar solo at just about every song. But they were game. They were down, and their average song length was a whole lot longer than it ever was in the 90s. And yeah, man, no, everything you guys said about like them maturing and this being their peak, like, couldn't agree more.
So I'm going to move on here to Scotty's pick, and I'm just going to kind of give you the chance to explain why you chose this one, because I know this one is near and dear to your heart.
Yeah, let's depress everybody. Last week, professional wrestling lost one of the greats, one of the geniuses in Danny Havoc, and I'm going to refer to him as Grant from this point on. And Grant and I frequently sat at shows and discussed music. The first time we bonded, I was actually wearing a Bonnie and Prince Billy shirt. So everything comes full circle. And we frequently discussed Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, and this was the record that we both agreed is their best album. Boatman's Call, not any of the stuff he's put out now, no matter how good it is. It's this. This is the album. It came out in 1996. It was released right after Let Lovin' soared them into superstardom. They were on soundtracks. They were in movies and commercials. And then they took a hard left, and Nick Cave wrote and rewrote and re-recorded a bunch of American murder ballads. And that's the theme of the record, is someone dies in every song. At least someone dies in every song. And it's weird when you think that you hear this album and you hear songs like The Curse of Millhaven or Henry Lee or something, and then you just get a Kylie Minogue feature in the middle of the record without really much of a heads up. I thought that was pretty amazing, but this is absolutely one of the best top to bottom rock records I've ever heard, between the writing and the composition and the way it's sung and performed. And it sucks that he doesn't really play much of it anymore, but there was a lot that went into this record that he probably can't go back to.
So I was going to say off the bat, like, I was happy that you picked a Nick Cave album. First of all, beyond anything else, rest in power, Danny Havoc.
Absolutely.
Right, we lost a great man. So here's my relationship with Nick Cave. I don't have one. I know that, like, everyone that I've ever known has Nick Cave, everyone, all of my friends growing up, all about it. And because I was like a douchey music hipster who just listened to trash for a very long time, I never jumped into it, because it was always like Nick Cave was for like smarter people, like him and like Portishead. They don't sound at all similar, but like the smart kids listen to that shit. I was stupid and poor. My music was fast and aggressive, and that was it. Fuck everyone else. So this was fucking awesome for me to get into and listen to and just absorb. I'm going to open this up. Jamie, I know you happen to be a big fan of Nick Cave, so I'm going to ask politely that we don't gush over this one too much, because we still have two other records to go through. So, yeah, give us your thoughts, man.
Oh, I agree with you and your buddy, and I'm sorry about your loss, guys. That fucking sucks. Shitty part of life, and I feel you guys on this one. For my condolences. Cave is probably the artist who writes about death and any writer I can possibly think of, but it is an appropriate one. Murder Ballad, I agree, is the best Nick Cave album. When we were in high school, the same thing you're talking about, I thought Nick Cave was like VH1 Crow music. Like, I did not realize that he was like a punk at all. And then, our mutual friend Adam Bernstein was a big fan of his. And eventually I saw like what young Nick Cave looked like. And I was like, oh, he's a punk. Okay. So then you get the party is so aggressive that it's pretty much unlistenable to most human beings. Like, most human beings are lying if they can tell me that they can enjoy a whole record by the birthday party.
It's a very fair statement.
Well into his career, and the PJ Harvey and Kylie Minogue part of the record. Those two songs are both, to me, like about as cool a duet pairing as you could get twice on a record. And then to boot, Death at the end, the last song, which is a weird closer for a song. It's just like all about death, and the closer is death. Just a song, remember, death is not the end. So it's got him, Shane McGowan of the Pogues,
Yep.
Alexa from the band, Kylie Minogue, P. Harvey, and another woman who was, I think, Nick Cave's ex at the time, who was like his collaborative partner. So you have all these people sing this weird song, which I produced by Bob Dylan, but just a totally unpopular Bob Dylan song. I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure. But it is a record. What's this? The second to last song is 14 minutes long, and it's just it has more lyrics than most songs. He is just spitting out all this fucking shit. There's a million characters, that he introduces, and they all just die. It's an insane song. 14 minutes, 29 seconds. It's a great work that would probably alienate most listeners, I would say. But then you have like Crow Jane is him doing the Doors, which is awesome. I love the Doors.
Super good.
There's a lot. Yeah, I'm not gonna gush over this record much, but Nick Cave is one of the greats, and doing this is 10 songs that has him being aggressive, him being poetic, him being pop, him being melancholic, romantic, all on one record. That's an accomplishment. You should give it up for Nick Cave's Murder Ballads.
It's right here in like the center of my notes on the album. My favorite tracks on this were the ones with the female vocalists in there. So I think it's dope that like everyone has kind of jumped in on that. Johnny, lay it on us.
So it's funny, like Nick Cave's been on my radar for a little while, but it's always been like one of these days I'm gonna go and sit down and listen to a Nick Cave record, and it hadn't happened up until now. And it was partially because I wasn't entirely sure like what's the best place to start. So this to me was a really awesome listen in terms of like the subject matter, while being dark, the presentation gave me like this real like Leonard Cohen vibe, which I like, so right away absolutely resonates with me. Yeah, the I'm a sucker for any sort of male-female duets across just about any genre. So yeah, the Kylie Minogue stuff out of the park. The whole thing, suffice to say, I'm gonna have to go and dive a whole lot more into Nick Cave and the history of Nick Cave because, and like, I'm way too late to the party on this one.
I had a really weird note on here where I don't know, maybe one of you will get my my reference, but some of the stuff I was like, I'm getting notes of like the parts on Cradle of Filth albums where it's just like the evil sounds where they're trying to set the mood before they break in with like blast beats. So I was getting that, and I also wrote down, how is this shit not on Broadway? Just the storytelling. The storytelling is just brilliant. Again, like I'm very happy that I was able to be brought into this because again, I'm such a music douchey hipster that like I have to be forced to listen to like new and interesting things. That or I'm just a loser. But that's besides the point. Really dope pick. Before we move on, any other questions, comments, concerns, or feelings? Cool, guys. Let's go into our guest's choice, which I'm going to say it right here and flat out. This, to me, has been the best listen of something that I've never listened to before. Because I know every week I'm like, oh, this is really cool and this was great. This one to me was just like, oh, this is brilliant. And is going to go immediately in rotation. Jamie, lay it on us. What was your choice for this week?
Oh, I'm so glad you dug it like that. My choice was a 1982 record, Benefactor, by the group Romeo Void. And there's a couple reasons I chose this, but the first thing that comes to mind is that this band is mostly regarded as a one-hit wonder. Never Say Never, which is on record and also is on their previous release, but the success of that single, which I love, is produced by Rick Ocasek from The Cars, who is an amazing producer who doesn't get enough credit for production because he produced Suicide, Bad Brains, Hole, Guided by Voices, like a lot of great shit. Anyway, just another to the late Rick Ocasek, who I love. So a lot of really great bands. Some bands are kind of one-hit wonders, like Violent Femmes, for example, or a band and really a one-hit wonder. Blister in the Sun is pretty much, people know one song. Even, you being a Candlebox fan, like Candlebox kind of have two songs people know. Sometimes like the band is something else entirely. And I picked this because I want to pick something that, I guess with stuff going on right now, like Romeo Void is kind of like a utopian band, like a way that band should be. Like, this is like aggressive music with a incredible front woman who is an American Indian who is just like full of rage and lust, and a real, to me, incredible protagonist and challenging protagonist for a rock band. And band is a challenging band for out of punk. They formed in 1977. I always thought they were British for some reason, from the San Francisco punk scene, which the Dead Kennedys, for example, came out of. And you can kind of like get some of that, like their version of punk, whatever you want to call this music, is really, to me, visionary and interesting. And the use of the phone, the sax rocks and is dissonant and melodic at the same time. The sax like serves like a shredder lead guitar sometimes, and then sometimes makes it funky. They're not the only punk band like this or in that genre or whatever, but there's area, either like or Gang of Four or something like that, where like the rhythm section gets into like pub or funk or dance music in a way that kind of hurts the rock and roll groove a little bit. And this album, Benefactor, is like something I bought on vinyl, like kind of just being like, oh yeah, I should probably listen to more Romeo Void. Cool. And then I played it like 200 times in a row. And it's sometimes like that's like you maybe wouldn't ever, except on a whim, realize it. But like, this band is a really interesting band. And the other thing I have to say about it is that a lot of bands sound like this now. And this is 1982, which is like a cool time. There's a lot of good genres sort of developing, like heavy music, punk, wave, rap music, disco, like a lot of different stuff going on. I feel like this group was obviously like some people who were absorbing all this cool shit going on and putting them in a very cool style that you can see in interesting, like group can take on this kind of music and stuff with it. It like has a modern sound today, which I think is very cool discovery. Anyway, let me shut up about it and let you guys tell me. Yeah.
I was gonna say it's funny you mentioned all like the punk influence, which you could certainly get. I wrote down 3 bands that I was like, I'm getting like notes of this like mixed together, and it was X-Ray Specs, which is obvious with the female vocals and the sax. The Smiths, because Johnny Marr's guitar was that was the sound of the 80s to me. Just that alt rock or rock and roll of the 80s, Johnny Marr, and Susie and the Banshees. So those three, I think, together are giving us Romeo Void. This record to me is what this show is about, because nobody fucking knows this band outside of Never Say Never. Like, I have never in my lifetime heard of anyone bring this band up outside of Never, and I knew Never Say Never pretty well. I actually listened to it like days prior to you picking this, just because I was on an 80s kick. But getting into this shit was super cool. But I'm going to open it up to you guys. Johnny, lay it on us.
It's really funny about the names that, like, the bands that you thought of that, you got notes of, because I almost feel like I went in a completely different direction of what I was hearing there. Because, like, my first thought was like, oh, there's some Sting and the Police here. And then it was, oh, I'm getting some Huey Lewis in the News now. And then I'm getting a little bit of The Cure, or at least, like, they laid the foundation for The Cure, I guess. Or, like, so it's just interesting. But, like, I thought about Sting and the Police and Huey Lewis probably like 4 or 5 different times listening through this. Whole thing was unbelievable. I had never even heard Never Say Never, so this was like really an introduction. And I love one-hit wonders, man, so I'm really surprised I missed out on that one, but that's my bad, because as you said, this is absolutely going in regular rotation.
Yeah, it's funny. The only reason I heard of this band is because VH1 did they had a series many years ago about, like, we're gonna reunite this one-hit wonder band, and they did it for a couple, and this was one of them. And I was like, okay, and I watched the show, and I was like, all right, and that's how I knew the song, and that's about it. Scotty, go ahead, let us know what you thought.
I really, really like this record, and I got a little bit of the Smiths, I got a little bit of the Cars out of it. I didn't know that Rick Ocasek had actually produced the record. Ventilation, Chinatown, and Orange immediately went into my, I have a drive down to South Jersey playlist, so I want to hear this when I drive that 2 hours. And Shake the Hands of Time is probably my favorite song that I've discovered on this show.
I see. That's what I'm saying. Like, this was a pick, man. Like, I knew. Listen, Jamie's music love and my understanding of Jamie's music love goes back far. I knew I had to have him on this show. And buddy, you picked a fucking banger. 100%. This is the universal 2 thumbs up from everybody. Before we move on, any other questions, comments, concerns, feelings that we'd like to share?
No.
Oh, all right, guys. So let's go to the last pick, which is my choice. I picked the album Anthems by Pure Love. Pure Love is a band. I actually found out about this group because their lead singer, Frank Carter, who currently is playing in Frank Carter and the Rattlesnakes, was a singer of a British punk band called Gallows that I fucking still to this day love. I think they put out 2 records with Frank that I think are absolutely brilliant hardcore punk records. Didn't follow anybody's preconceived notions of what it should be. I love them. I love their ethos and everything. And then he just up and left Gallows, and I was a sad boy. But then he formed this band, and it was a very, very different vibe. If you happen to check out the album, or if you've checked it out on the playlist for those listening in and watching, it is not at all what you expect from Gallows. The first song I heard from them, and I'm blanking on the name because, I've brain damage, everybody. But the first song that I heard from these guys, he starts out saying, I'm so sick of singing about hate, it's never going to make a change, which, if you know what Frank was going through when he quit Gallows, it's like, and then here's me, this angry, angsty 20-something-year-old who's like, yeah, why am I singing about hate? Just everything about this was just very different from what I was used to, and I love the fact that he was able to take this, like, blistering, angry punk fellow with his throat all tattooed up, and just like, I'm gonna fucking croon out some pop tunes. But let me open it up to you guys. Scotty, what did you think of this one?
I'm such a mark for Gallows and Frank Carter as a whole. It's insane. I heard this record when it first came out, and the first thing that popped into my head the first time it heard it was it reminded me of kind of the evolution that Bob Mould went through. How he went from this really angry young man at the beginning of Husker Du to now he's like a little more mellow, making straight up alternative rock. This is probably one of my favorite like albums as a whole of all time, and a lot of it is because the A side just back to back to back to back to greatness. I love this record like a lot.
Yeah, that A side is something else, man. Like, I mean, you start out with like some poppy fun and all that, but goddamn, once you get into Bury My Bones, the hits, and just like they are out there and it's just like catchy tune. And I'm also a massive mark for like whoa-oh-ohs, you know, that kind of stuff in your punk and your poppy stuff. And there's a lot of that on here, and it sucks me in like nobody's business. Jamie, lay it on us. What did you think?
Well, I had no background on this. Like you had never heard, you know, you had no on the other one. This was one where like I'd never heard of the band and I don't know Gallows. Not my area, you know. And this came out in 2013, and I missed it 100%. So without having any like background beyond the paragraph on Spotify or whatever, and I didn't know if they were American or British. But I found out they're British. There's something about this delivery of the guy that is like combination of accent where it's like really Armstrong wanted to sound kind of like Joe Strummer, but like he was like SoCal accent or trying to like have a little lip like Strummer, or like Pete Shelley from the Buzzcocks, that kind of like Cockney sort of thing. And then here you have guy kind of tucking away most of his British accent, I think, to have a little bit more of a American punk kind of feel. And it was, but I before I found out, I was like, I didn't think they were British, because it really reminds me of like this really, okay, like there's some genre of like heartfelt American punk, or like the Gaslight Anthem and Against Me, Alkaline Trio, really like hard on the sleeve, anthemic, pump your fist, you know, punk. And that's like what it sounded like to me. And the other thing I found out about the record is that it's produced by Phil Norton, who produced 3 of the best sound like alternative rock records: Do Live by Pixies, The Color and the Shape by Foo Fighters, and Bleed American by Jimmy Eat World.
Oh,
so
shit.
this like him, his sound again, 2013. I'm not sure what he was doing. You know, this is the first time I heard his name used in a while for a record I was listening to, and it definitely like has like what this guy Jordan, you know, big fist pump guitars, sources, which is the lyrics are cool. I like kind of would want to gate them a little more, because sometimes it's like, that's just not what I'm absorbing right away. But like there was some cool stuff going on, and yeah, I would say that I dug it. I thought it was cool, and I would, you know, investigate more. But I don't think they did anything else. I think this is it, right?
Yep. This is the only thing they did after this. I think Frank kind of went on his own way and started up the Rattlesnakes, which is, I mean, they're a little bit heavier and more aggressive. I think he was kind of done playing, like, you know, the pretty British guy that American girls want to fuck, and he just wanted to, you know, get aggressive again. Because the Rattlesnakes are pretty fucking aggressive.
Yeah. This is the thing, like, life of every hardcore singer, they must stop what they're doing, have an existential crisis, pick up an acoustic guitar, like write like a different kind of, like, more mature kind of record or two, and then maybe go back to doing hardcore right after that. that's just like something that always happens. If I believe, from experiences.
No, that is the life cycle of the hardcore singer.
The cycle of life.
Johnny, lay it on us. What'd you think of Pure Love's anthems?
So we've talked about Gallows a number of times in the past. I was lucky enough to see them a couple times while they were still a band. Now after like I hadn't looked anything up after Gallows, so I just thought like that was it. So I went into this blind, and then a little ways through, I'm like, something about this seems familiar, and I looked it up. I'm like, oh my god, and like my heart like the Grinch grew 3 sizes, because I truly thought that like wouldn't get any sort of Gallows in my life besides, I can play In the Belly of a Shark on Guitar Hero. I would cry into my fucking beer. But for the most part, no, absolute delight. Gonna be checking out the Rattlesnakes. Gonna be keeping this on regular rotation. And I'm just so happy to get more aggressive Frank Carter back in my life.
Yeah, Frank, it's once he left Gallows, man, like you realize Frank was Gallows. Because the new guy is just Frank would, at the start of the set, the entire band would go into the crowd, and it was just like you were getting I'll be quick about the story because I know we're running low on time, but the last fight not the last fight because I fought somebody at Guar, but the last fight prior to Guar, I fought somebody at a Gallows show. They were doing Orchestra of Wolves. It was the last song of the set, and I go to run and jump through the pit on top of everybody to try and get close so that Frank could give me the mic and we could sing together. And I feel on the back of my head 4 shots, and I turn around and it's some like 12-year-old kid. He's this thin, and he goes, "Dude, you just hit my mom." And I turn around, and this like even smaller woman is like holding her head, and I'm looking at him, and I'm looking at my brother who's right next to me. I'm looking at him. I go, "Fuck you! It's hardcore." That was that. I wasn't about to punch a 12-year-old. I was like, "Dude, I'll bury you. Like, relax yourself," because I'm not gonna punch a 12-year-old. But anyway, I swear I'm not a goon anymore, guys. Any other feelings, comments, concerns, anything before we move on? All right, guys. So again, in the interest of time, I'm just going to roll with the question of the week. Because let's try and answer it as quickly as humanly possible. Because we're running out of time here. So, question of the week: what is the first song or album that you remember obsessing over? I'm gonna start with Jamie.
Yeah, mine is really funny. It is the original, not the original soundtrack. It is the soundtrack to the film Forrest Gump. And for whatever reason, I'm not really sure exactly why this is, but there's a period of my life when I was 8 or 9 years old where I watched Forrest Gump exactly 1 week for a year or 2. I would wake before my parents on Saturday so I could watch the entire movie of Forrest Gump uninterrupted for a really, really long time. I don't know why I did this. This is literally what I just decided I should do when I was 8 or 9 or whatever. Anyway, eventually I realized that I really liked the music of Forrest Gump because they play a lot of really good stuff. Like, you know, when you're a kid, you don't really know what it is. Like Creedence and The Doors and Otis Redding, like a lot of like, you know, American soul and early rock and roll. Then when I realized I could buy that soundtrack, listen to it 10,000 times before I turned 11 years old, something like that, or 2 years old. So that was definitely, and it kind of made me realize that I love music, which I don't know because you're a kid and sometimes you don't know what you're into yet, but it helped figure that out.
Scotty, lay it on us.
Billy Joel's Piano Man. It's got nothing to do with fucking Piano Man. It's all about the Ballad of Billy the Kid.
Straight dopeness, man.
That's it.
Johnny Torres.
Yes, sir. That would be the 2001 legend "Take Off Your Pants and Jacket" by Blink-182.
Oh man, that is a legendary record right there. For yours truly, I was on a bus in summer camp. I was 5 years old, and some kid next to me had his tape player, and I go, "What are you listening to?" Because I'm a loudmouth, and he puts the headphones on, and it was Metallica's Black Album.
Yeah.
However, when I went home, I said, "Dad, I like Metallica." My dad literally threw his jacket on, ran out the house, went to Nobody Beats the Wiz on Flatbush Avenue in Brooklyn, and they did not have the Black Album. He bought me, shit was a Injustice for All, and I listened to that CD nonstop.
Yeah.
I don't remember anything about it at the time because I just liked loud, aggressive music. I knew that at 4 or 5 years old. Before we get out of here, guys, we're going to go the normal rounds of anything that you're looking to plug and where people could find you on social media. We'll start with Johnny Torres.
Yes, sir. Johnny Torres on Facebook and at The Concept JT on Twitter and Instagram.
Scotty.
You can find me at SC Ceriti on Twitter and Instagram.
Jamie.
My band is called Noice, Noice, and our music on Spotify, Bandcamp, iTunes, etc. And I'm Jamie Frey. Thanks for having me, guys. This is fucking awesome. Great face, Jake.
You guys know where you can find me. It's King of Chaos NYC on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Also, check out my podcast. That's the Year One Wrestling Podcast. Check us out on YouTube. We've got new shows coming out. I've got stuff where wrestlers, some of your favorite wrestlers, are talking about their favorite pranks. So make sure to check that one in addition to everything else that we've got going on. And make sure to check this out again next week where our guest will be the person that Johnny rode up to the moose-covered Maine state with. That would be Iron Rip Bison. Guys, until next time, keep listening and thank you for checking out Dude Have You Heard This.